So every time when you come back from a break, 3 things happen. I will get a timekeeper so you feel you have some control over your destiny. I will ask you if you have any questions, and then I will read you a poem. All the poems are on the website. So any questions, comments, or thoughts? That is not to deter you from any time. Just raise your hand anytime you have a question or thought. But any questions? Yes, ma'am.
You are freaking me out.
Good. Yes, fear is a great motivator. Yeah, fear is a great motivator.
We're doing pretty good, and now we are not.
Yeah. Well, we can always do better. I'm a good and caring person doing the best job I can, everything I do. Let me make another comment. No matter what you hear me say, this is what I believe. The quality of life of the men, women, and children who you support has never been better than it is today. Okay? That's true. Guess what? It's not good enough. Yeah. I mean, that's just the point. So, yeah, I'm pushing. Yes, I'm critical because it's not good enough. And if you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always gotten. And who right now is prepared to raise your hand and say the quality of life of the people we support is good enough? Sometimes people come up to me at break and will ask me a question. You're more than welcome to do that, but I won't answer it. Because whoever asks me the question, usually over half the people in the room have the same question, so I will tend to answer the question when we come back. So any other questions or comments or thoughts? Okay, let me read you a poem. Before I do that, here's a maxim. I just wanted to make sure that you could see it. Getting a life for people and coaching them into it is the intervention. And that's really the theme. It is not one of the specific values within the new settings rule, but it is the theme upon which the 10 values within the new settings rule are built. Again, 10 values within the rule, okay? I had been working with Easter seals of Southern California, if you're familiar with them. They're huge. They probably employ, I don't know, thousands. They go all the way from Central California to 100 miles north of Los Angeles. I mean, they're huge. They probably employ more people than most providers in most states. I mean, and you know where Easter seals came from? Do y'all know the history of it? We had a condition in this country, and remember I said that most of the people who I was supporting in my early years, you will no longer see any of those people, they're all gone. Well, so it is with the folks with Easter seals. Their whole mission was for children with polio, basically gone. So they had to find a new mission. That's Easter seal stamps. So at the time of Easter, they would sell stamps as a fundraiser. People used to send out, there used to be a thing called cards. You ever heard of cards, like greeting cards? I mean, they used to do this, yeah. And people would put stamps on the cards, and you would buy the stamps, and that's where Easter seals came from as the organization. And they tended to support people who had very high levels of need in terms of physical challenges, and that was true. But Easter seals had a huge number, and they're still struggling, of day wasting programs. And they had asked me at least, 15 years ago to try to get involved. The board says, hey, we got to do better, and trying to transition from those facility-based day wasting programs where people could have a meaningful life of purpose and so forth. And trying to change Easter seals is like turning around the Queen Mary. I mean, they are just so huge. I mean, and I don't know, they probably had 40-day program, 50-day program sites, just huge. So I introduced the concept, if I can find my black felt tip marker, and this is going to be also part of the foundation of the new rule. It was here someplace, hang on. I had a black felt, here it is right in front of me. And it's this is very important. This is a foundation of the final rule. Now, it's mine, but I'm just saying that it's important for the final rule. Acronym, GEM, stands for good enough for me. And the idea of good enough for me in the final rule, and I'll come back to Easter seals in a moment, is that when you look at the people who you support, this is what you're going to need to do. I'm giving you tools in your toolbox to meet the final rule. You just can't walk out here and say, I'm going to go meet the final rule. No, how are you going to meet it? This is about changing hearts and minds. You do understand that. This is about changing hearts and minds. And GEM is a strategy to do that, so that when you look at the people you support, do not see them. When you look at the people you support, do not see them, see yourself. That's you who has excessive saliva coming down the side of your face. And no one will give you a runner's wristband to teach you how to keep your mouth dry. No one will ask the physician whether you should have a scopolamine patch of the Dramamine family to go on your back to help keep your mouth dry. No one will ask the physician whether you should have ophthalmic atropine, QID, to help keep your mouth dry. You have to spend the rest of your life with saliva coming down the side of your face. That's you. You're a woman. You're allowed to leave your home in the morning looking like you just crawled out from under a rock. You have an ill-fitting sweatsuit with part of your breakfast on it. Your hair is disheveled. You have milk on your face, no jewelry, and no makeup. You look at the female staff who come to support that woman. Their clothes are clean. They're well-fitted. They are not in disarray. Their hair is combed. And for the vast majority of female staff, they've decided to wear makeup and jewelry. And if there's a female staff and she looks like she just crawled out from under a rock, this is important. It's informed consent. She stood in front of the mirror. She sees how she looks. She understands the social and psychological consequences of it. That's fine. Are you going to get me to believe that a woman who can't even tell you her name, she doesn't even know she's gone someplace after she's gotten back, has made an informed consent decision to leave her home that way? It's August, July, whatever, in California. The man is, and temperature is going to reach 101. The man leaves, he's 40 years old and he has Down syndrome. He leaves his home in the morning with a chartreuse t-shirt, orange silky knee shorts, white knee socks, and black dress shoes. He looks like a clown, a clown. And I turned to the male staff and I said, why is he leaving his home this way? And the staff says, I asked him what he wanted to wear, that's what he chose, it's his right. His right? I know the rights list of DDS. Look at the rights list. There is no right to be devalued, degraded, and dehumanized. It's not a right, it's a choice. And when the staff flip that rights card in your face, you don't let them get away with that. It's not a right. The reason they do that is to absolve themselves of all responsibility so they don't have to support that man in making good choices. And by the way, if you make it a struggle, you will lose. If you make it a struggle, you will lose. It's not about a struggle, it's about relationships, relationships, relationships. That's you. You use a wheelchair. You can't even reach the closet bar in your bedroom because the agency has made a decision not to lower the closet bar. That's you. You have contractures. You can't reach the brake handles on your wheelchair. The agency has made a decision not to give you brake extensions on your wheelchair, so now you're permanently mechanically restrained. And a DSP did not buy that chair. That chair was authorized by a physician, reviewed and approved by a PT or OT. How could they do that to people? By the way, don't be pointing your finger at them. You saw it. You see it. That's a decision you've made. Who's going to tell me they can't see that the person can't reach the brake handles on their wheelchair? And they cost, what, $6 more for brake extensions? This is the decision they made. That's me. I have a skin tag on my eyelid blocking part of my vision. They won't even send me to a dermatologist to have it removed. So GEM, why is GEM so important? Because when you see the people who you support, and that is you, it hopefully will cause this. D-I-S-E-A-S-E. That's it. There's the motivating factor. Why? Because rules, regulations won't cause that to happen. Hey, he's had saliva coming out of his mouth. You've had, since he's been there, licensing has been to the house 10 times. The service coordinator, case manager is on it. They see it. They won't do anything about it. Come on, guys. Good people cause good things to happen. So I introduced this concept of GEM at Easter Seals of Southern California. And at that time, the director of quality assurance was Julie E.B. McKenzie. And she sends me a poem. Now, a lot of people give me poems. All the poems that I will read to you today are on my website. Just look at poems, right? And most poems that people give me never see the light of day. I'm appreciative, but they don't. This poem is very, very good. And it's entitled, Good Enough for Me. Those of you who have any responsibility as a supervisor or in training, if you make a decision, remember it's a decision, to turn your back on this and not use it with your staff, I don't know how you're going to implement the final rule. I don't know what you're going to do. You need to tell me what you think you're going to do in order to get it implemented, okay? Here it is, good enough for me. In my better moments, before I do anything with or for someone I support, I ask myself, is this good enough for me? Is it good enough for me to sit in my wheelchair with crayons and paper in front of me for an hour? Is it good enough for me to be dressed in the same clothes I wore yesterday? Is it good enough for me that my hair is a mess, my face is unclean, and my nails are ragged? Is it good enough for me never to be allowed to prepare a snack, try to eat my food myself, and pour my own drink? Is it good enough for me to wait, and wait? Is it good enough for me to have my depends change and never be allowed to do it myself with support? Is it good enough for me to be told to go, stop, hurry up, sit down, stand up, come here, go there without being asked what I would like to do? Is it good enough for me never to have the opportunity to make a contribution to my community? Is it good enough for me to use only play money and make pretend purchases? Is it good enough for me when I never take part in a whole project from beginning to end, but only 1 or 2 steps of it? Is it good enough for me that I never get to earn my own money? Is it good enough for me never to be allowed to serve my own food, make a mess, clean up my own mess, and take the time I need to finish something? Is it good enough for me that people believe that I cannot learn, grow, make friends, and have a good life? Is it good enough for me that no one listens to what I want, what I value, what's important to me? More and more I see myself not as a person to take care of others, but to care about others. My job is to support and assist people, not do everything for them. If it were me, that is what I would want. So put on your good enough for me glasses and join me in asking over and over again, is this good enough for me? That's what the final rule is about. Now, I wish I had these glasses for many years. They're relatively new. And they contain the gem lens, very special lens. Have any of you ever been mushroom hunting? Raise your hand, mushroom hunting. No, not those kind of mushrooms. We're talking, yeah, well, she's from the Golden Gate area. I mean, the mushrooms, they make happy mushrooms. No. So anyways, the first time I was mushroom hunting, people usually go with someone who knows something about mushrooms. You don't want to go just by yourself. You can die, right? So I was mushroom hunting with my best friend, James, outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, and I come out with a little wicker basket for my mushroom. James comes out with his big canvas bag, holds about 100 pounds of mushrooms, and I'm out in the forest. James, I don't see any mushrooms. There's no mushrooms here. Tom, there's mushrooms everywhere. Look at that oak tree. You see it about 20 yards out? Look on the north side of the tree where the moss is growing. Follow your eye down to the bottom. Oh, yeah, James, I see the mushrooms down there. But that's it, James. I don't see any other mushrooms. Tom, look, straight out. See those 3 boulders? Look where the leaves have blown up against those boulders. Look in front of those leaves. Oh, yeah, James, I see the mushrooms in front of those leaves. Hey, James, over there where that path sort of meanders and all those mushrooms are growing between the ferns. Look at all those mushrooms. James, over here to my right, where the field abuts up against that tree line, look at all the mushrooms growing along the tree line. Guess what happens? The whole forest fills with mushrooms. Here's the key. This is key. When you change the way in which you see things, the things you see will change. That's the key. That's the tool. And if you make a decision not to do this, I don't know what you're going to do. When you change the way in which you see things, the things you see will change. But if you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always gotten. How are you going to see that he has the use of only one arm, but you gave him a 2-handed seat belt, and he's now permanently mechanically restrained? A 1-handed seat belt is one with a plastic sleeve and a hinge. It costs $3 more. You say, we don't restrain people. Yeah, give me a break. You do not have to have the answers. Please understand that. Some of you, when I said ophthalmic atropine, you never heard of it. Who cares? Scopolamine patch, you never heard of it. Don't worry about it. You don't need the answer. Your job is to have the question. The question. You look at it and you say, something's not right. We hire a lot of people who have answers. We have, psychologists, we have nurses, we have OTs, we have PTs. There's a lot of people out there that have answers. You're not expected to have the answer, but you better have the question. And if you don't have the question, there is no way you're ever going to get this rule implemented. Because what you're going to fall back and say, well, we were licensed and everything's fine. They said we had no deficiencies. You'll miss it. So using GEM is the only way I know, my opinion, you're really going to make this work. Any questions on it? It's really important. Here we go. Doing the right thing with all the people all the time. That's best practice. There are 2 people that are critically important in our field. They are considered the 2 most important people in the field of developmental disabilities. The name of one of the people is Wolfensberger. Wolfensberger. W-O-L-F, isn't it? He's German. And W-O-L-F-E-N-S-B-E-R-G-E-R, Wolfensberger. If you've never heard of him, if I ever said, have you ever heard of the principle of normalization? You'd say, yeah. Have you ever heard of social role valorization? Yeah, like two of the most important principles in our field, right? And he if you look him up, you will see he's authored probably 40 books. He passed away, I would say about 15 years ago, 16 years ago, and just an incredible guy in terms of what he came up with. But I want to share this with you. This is his quote. I cannot hear what you are saying. Your actions are drowning out your voice. If I were to ask you right now, do you think people should have a meaningful and valued day? And if I asked you, which I won't, to raise your hand, I will assure you every hand in the room will be raised. I don't believe you. Because if I take a look at what most of the people are doing for most provider agencies, they sit there. The staff are caring for them, making meals, cleaning their toilets, having them go to So you understand that saying something is one thing, doing it is something else. The final rule is not about what we say. That's not going to get us anywhere. It's not even what you know, it's what you do. It's what you do. That's the key. And that statement is really important. Another little point, and I'm always thinking here. And I've always trained, I told you that, no matter how far back we go. When I first started my first job, 1969, when I worked at Northern Indiana Children's Hospital between my master's and my doctorate. And up until a few years ago, if you had me come and train, you want to know what you would have been hearing? Schedules of reinforcement, non-seclusionary timeout, hierarchy of intervention, least restrictive alternative, continuum of service, behavioral contracts, token economies. I had no idea, right hand, no idea that what we were supposed to be doing is helping people get a life. Honest. All 3 degrees are in the field. I never had it. In one class, one book, one article, one faculty member never told me what I was supposed to be doing is helping people get a life. I've had some good supervisors in my early years supervise me. I never had a supervisor tell me what I was supposed to be doing is helping people get a life. What are you telling people? Are you even referring to your staff as direct care staff? Which DDS in this state doesn't even recognize? Only DSPs? Teachers, mentors, allies, coaches, shapers, crafters, molders of lives. Actions. This is a cultural shift. You cannot change a culture, and that's what it's going to take to implement the final rule for most agencies, a cultural shift, simply by buying new tools, sending people to training, or asking them to change. And I will tell you, there are providers right now in California that are already fully meeting the final rule. I work with them, guaranteed. I would give you their names, but I won't, okay? They're absolutely meeting the final rule. And I would say that's probably about 5% of the people who are supported, because most of those providers who are meeting the final rule tend to be relatively smaller providers. They're not the larger providers. You cannot change a culture simply by buying new tools, sending people to training, or asking them to change. You being here today and just going away, you may get an A on the test. That's not going to do it. If you want to change your work culture, you have to change the work systems that created that culture. Got it? What do your job descriptions look like? Is it clear for the DSPs that they are teachers, mentors, allies, coaches? How are you training the staff? Who is interviewing the staff? Under the new settings rule, who has to interview them? The people who are being supported. Are you getting input from the people you support? When you complete a performance appraisal evaluation? How do you get input from somebody when they can't speak? When they don't even know they're giving input? You know how to do that? We do. I mean, obviously there's a way. How does that person who has pervasive intellectual challenges interview somebody when they don't even know what an interview is? I'll give you a little helpful hint. They invite them over to their house for coffee, even though they're not inviting them. It's on behalf of the staff. And you watch the interaction. And then you tell that staff ultimately, I was observing as you were interacting with Bob is the person who lives in the home, and it seems like he had a smile on his face a good part of the time. I think he likes you. We're going to offer you employment. You understand what the helpful hint is there? The reason we are offering you employment is because he likes you. Here's the hint. The reason you may be leaving is because he doesn't. You don't have to say that. It's clear. It's clear. It's in the final rule. It's in the final rule. Hey, don't throw bricks at me if you don't like it. Now, these big agencies that have these HR departments, what are they going to do? How are they going to make this happen? When, in order for this to work, you got to give up control. That's the problem. It's a control issue. These are the same homes that they have snack time. A cookie for you, don't you take two. Got to be in control. They won't even have a damn cookie jar in the house. They've got to be in control. And they'll come up with 1,000 reasons why they can't have a cookie jar. Oh, by the way, I don't care about cookie jars. Come on, guys. Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question.
Sure, of course.
If they're in control and they're able to choose it, where does this discrimination come in if they choose that they don't like that individual that they're interviewing, or they hired them and they've worked, and because of their color of their skin or their accent?
Wonderful question. Wonderful. Let me do that. She's really ugly and I don't like her. It can be 1,000 reasons. There is going to be 1,000 questions you are going to be asking, and every question is perfect. Can I answer your question?
Please.
Hell if I know. Did you understand? In other words, in other words,
For discrimination,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
let them go, not the client.
No, I'm saying I don't know the answer. It has an answer. No, we don't let anyone go. Come on, guys. You're not figuring this out. Let me put it in this context, okay? Because we all got to get on the same page, okay? 1965, there was a president named John F. Kennedy. Stay with me. And I remember him getting on television. And I didn't have a color television. It was black and white. I know, you'd never heard of John F. Kennedy, but we had a president. I know. Yeah. 1965, not 1865. So he got on TV, and he announced that by the end of the decade, we would be putting a man on the moon. And I'm thinking to myself, the moon, it's 250,000 miles away. There's no air on the moon. There's no water on the moon. 1/6 the gravity. What was the status of computers in 1965? What was the status? Not far afield from the abacus. And I'm thinking, how in the heck are we going to get on the moon? What were the people in NASA thinking? We're going to the moon. What happened in 1968 or 69? We put a man on the moon. No one is asking us to put a man on the moon. They're asking us to figure out how in the world we're going to help people have an improved quality of life. And if you can't keep your mother-in-law out of your own business, you're not going to figure this out. It is a creative process, the answers to which we do not have in the majority of cases. That's a fact. We will figure this out. We figured out everything else. If somebody had told me 20 years ago that your 6 state-operated developmental centers would all be closing, you know what I would say? You're out of your mind. Where are these people going? People have suctioning 5 times a day, have to receive all nourishment by tube, they're on oxygen, and you're going to put them in a community residence? I would say you're crazy. I would say, how are we going to do that? But the people who were behind the system knew how we were going to do it. There's answers for all this. You have a mission. You have a mission. What's that make you? Missionaries. And there are sinners out there, so help me. There are people out there who truly believe that the men and women who we support are not capable of making valued and meaningful contributions to their community. There are people out there who see them as children in adult bodies, honest. Your job is to make believers out of the doubters. Your job is to get converts. That's what this is about. You know what the general society thinks? That these people have no value and no meaning. Why would they think that? Because we are the professionals and we have made a decision that they have no right to decide where they live, who they live with, who comes into their life. We've made a decision that they can't be employed, they can't volunteer. You go to a shopping mall, you'll see some staff holding the hand of a 40-year-old man with Down syndrome as if he is 4 years old. What do you want your community to think when they see that? What else could they think? Don't blame the community. And by the way, when that staff is not doing the right thing, do never point your finger at that DSP. Without exception, every single DSP, no exception, has a supervisor. That supervisor knows exactly what that staff is doing. And don't point your finger at the supervisor. The supervisor has a what? We're all in this together, guys. We're all in this together. This is the toughest thing we have ever worked on. It's not about putting a temperature regulator on a hot water heater. This is about changing hearts and minds. And it's a very, very tough thing to do. Don't throw bricks at me. I am not CMS. If you don't like it, pick up the phone and tell Medicaid to rescind the rule. Okay? The truth is, a lot of this stuff we don't have easy answers for. I will guarantee you we will figure it out. Why the state and many providers have decided to wait 7 years from 2014, I have not a clue. I don't know why they waited now we only have 8 months. I don't know. I can't answer that question. But that's a decision. You know why you've waited. I mean, I don't know. And every one of your answers may be different as to why you've made a decision to wait. It's all been on the, they had all these hearings, everything was there. So here we go. Great question. I don't know what else to say. Did I halfway answer it?
No, not really, but.
Yeah, well, I can't answer. Yeah, because
You don't have the answer.
I don't have the answer. I don't. And I make no, and by the way, I want you to be able to do the same thing. You need to be able to look at something and say, I don't know how to do it. It's when people think that they got it, it's going to get them into trouble. It's what, I don't know. But I will assure you, there are other people out there who have the answers. There's nothing that we are going to be experiencing here in this regional center that is not being experienced in other regional centers throughout the state and in the entire country. The whole country is under the same final rule. The whole country. Here we go. If you don't like where you are, move. You're not a tree. Yeah. Shift happens. It does. Well, I know. You thought I was saying something else. Whether you want it or not, whether you expect it or not, whether you participate in it or not, shift happens. I love this one, don't you? Everybody see what's on the screen? Isn't that great? Yes. There's only two things I don't like: change and the way things are. Yeah. The mantra I gave you, I'm a good and caring person doing the best job I can. Do you realize how important that's going to be for you to share that with your staff? Because there are some agencies that have staff as caretakers. Some agencies where you've had staff working in your day support facility-based segregated environments, and you don't want them to think at all that they have been not good people doing what they thought was the right thing. You don't want them to feel that way. You're going to get too much resistance and change. Shift does indeed happen, has happened, and is currently happening. As a result, we need to work hard to use what we know about the change process to help to deal effectively with major shifts in people's professional and personal lives. We've got to help our staff with this. Again, please understand, I have not introduced the final rule yet. Remember what I said. I'm just giving this to you as a background because the change issues are so huge with this thing. We need a background on how you're going to make it happen. And it's got to start with each one of us. We have to be able to change. We have to be able to use GEM. We have to be cheerleaders. And I would really encourage you, don't try to validate the changes that you are making based upon the final rule. You will be making a big mistake. Don't say, oh, the reason we're doing this is the final rule. That's a big mistake. That's not why you should be doing it. You need to be doing it because it's the right thing to do. Don't hide behind the final rule. There's nothing to hide behind. You're doing it because this is what you believe in is the right thing to do. It is critical to identify the beliefs, demonstrate the behaviors, and apply the skills that will support people to make positive transitions during this period of intense change. And if I was a director, CEO of any of your not-for-profits, I would want to make sure my board thoroughly understood this stuff. I'm doing, and I have no way of getting it released because it's not me, in Kansas, I'm doing either a 1 hour or 2 hour recorded session for families and board members on this, coldly condensed, pulling out all this kind of stuff and just dealing with what they need to know. And boy, if I was an agency, I would want to make sure that families thoroughly understood this stuff. Okay, there's two kinds of mindsets. One's called monkey and one's called monk. Monkey and monk. Got it? Let's take a look at this. Yeah. There's monkey mind. Now what's interesting, I got two columns you're going to see. And on the monk mind, it's so long it goes down into the border. And I normally don't put anything in the border, but just a heads up. The monkey mind is overwhelmed by multiple branches. And some of you may feel like you're just overwhelmed. And even though I haven't even started the content yet, you will feel like you're overwhelmed. And guess what? That's okay. That's okay if you feel overwhelmed. You know what? It is overwhelming. I don't know how else to say it. The monkey mind coast in the passenger seat. You don't want to do that. You want to take charge. Do not coast. You got to figure out what is your plan for your agency on how you're going to get this thing up and running. Complains, compares, and criticizes. This is not about criticizing this thing. It is what it is. Overthinks and procrastinates. Don't want to overthink it. Short-term gratification. Demanding and entitled. This is the way the mind, again, the monkey mind. Changes in whim. Amplifies negatives and fears. Self-centered and obsessed. Multitasking. Controlled by anger, worry, and fear. We have to be controlled by our goal, our mission. Our mission. Does whatever feels good. Looks for pleasure. Looks for temporary fixes. Now let's take a look at the monk mind. This will be easier for me to see. Focused on the root of the issue. And the root of the issue here is enhancing quality of life. That's the root of the issue. There's no other issue. That's it. So if you say, well, what's the final rule about? It's enhancing quality of life, unlike licensing or anything else. And the monk mind lives intentionally and consciously. Compassionate, caring, and collaborative. Analyzes and articulates. Disciplined, that's going to be important, disciplined. Long-term gains. Enthusiastic. That's why I said we got to be cheerleaders on this stuff. Enthusiastic. Getting people motivated and inspired. Commits to a mission, vision, or goals. Where there is no vision, the people perish. What is your vision? And by the way, I'm Jewish. That comes from the New Testament. I just threw that out for good measure, okay? Yeah. Where there is no vision. Hey, when I coach, sometimes I'll have the supervisor. I said, "Give me your vision. What's life going to be like for him 1 year from today?" You know, there are supervisors that can't even tell you. But if they told me, then if I took one of the DSPs, took them aside, they didn't hear it. I said, "Can you tell me what life's going to be like for him 1 year from today?" So let's say there's 7 DSPs in the lives of that person. Are all 7 DSPs going to tell me the same thing that the supervisor just told me? Or are we just there to care for people? Hey, if you don't know where you were and you don't know where you are, you're going to end up someplace you don't even want to be. Works for breaking down negatives. There's no room for negatives. Self-care. Got to be good to yourself for service. Single tasking. Controls and engages anger wisely. Seeks self-control and mastery. Looks for meaning. And finally, looks for getting solutions. That's what it's going to take. By the way, you know what those skills are? If you look at the monk mind, how would you define that? What is that? Leadership. If an organization doesn't have a leader, how's it going to handle this? Leader. And do not get your positional authority confused with leadership. Positional authority is the authority that one has by virtue of their job description. Leadership requires personal power. Again, no texting, please? Yeah. Yeah. Your notes? Okay, good. Thank you. If you're taking pictures, that's fine. Is that Leadership is about personal power. I'm going to throw this out for good measure. I really want you to hear it, okay? Personal power is the power that is given to you by those around you because they perceive you as a capable, competent, and caring person. Personal power is the power that is given to you by those around you because they perceive you as a capable, competent, and caring person. There are many people in agencies, CEOs, department heads, and so forth, that have a lot of positional authority, but no personal power. You're not going to make this happen by sending out a memo, your positional authority. It won't work. If your staff have not see you as a capable, and by the way, capable, competent, and caring, those are metaphorical. Knowledgeable, skilled, sensitive, compassionate, I don't care. How do they see you? If they don't see you that way, if you walk around looking like you got the worst case of hemorrhoids of any living human being, I think I'm a mushroom, they keep me in the dark and feed me manure. Who's attracted to that? If you don't celebrate your staff, celebrate them. I go up to a staff, when was the last time your supervisor celebrated you? They think it's a joke because that's the decision their supervisor has made. Now you notice that everything that I share with you is free. You don't need anybody's permission to implement it. And everything that I'm sharing with you is consistent with the rules and regulations under which you have to operate. You're going to have to work really hard to come up with some excuses. I used to ask, why doesn't somebody do something about that? And then I realized that I was somebody. You ever hear somebody say, we have a morale problem around here? You are the morale. It's not somebody else. I mean, people like disassociate themselves. Mahatma Gandhi had a great quote. Be the change in the world you wish to see. Be the change in the world you wish to see. You got to walk the talk on this stuff, folks, as we get into it. Let me see. 1500s, maybe? 1500s. Machiavelli, somewhere around there, right? Anybody good in literature? When was Machiavelli? 1500s? 1600s? You a literature guy? What? 15?
Late 1500s.
What was it?
Late 1500s, maybe?
Late 1500s, maybe? Yeah. Anyways, he was the author of a book called The Prince. And in one of the chapters, there was this thing. And I want to put this up here. This is from The Prince. It's really excellent. And it's entitled, It Must Be Considered. It must be considered that there is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle, than to initiate a new order of things. For the reformer, that's you. Please understand that. Has enemies, and all those who would profit by the old order, and only lukewarm defenders in those who would profit by the new order. This lukewarmness, arising partly from the fear of their adversaries, who do not truly believe in anything new until they've had actual experience of it, thus it arises that on every opportunity for attacking the reformer, you, his or her opponents do so with the zeal of partisans. The others only defend him or her half-heartedly, so that between them he, she runs great danger. Written in the 1500s, and in my opinion, it is true today as the day it was written. And if you think you have some staff that are challenging, just wait till you start putting your back to this. You will experience members of the underground in your organization like you have never experienced them. People that are going to fight you tooth and nail over this. Fear of their own failure. Fear of the loss of their control. Fear of the loss of their independence. There's reasons that people fear. They're not bad people. They didn't get up in the morning and make a decision, I don't want the people we support not to have a life. That's not what they're thinking. They're not even going to tell you that they fear failure. They're not going to tell you that they fear the loss of control. You know, like it's 2 o'clock in the morning, the guy gets up. He's 40 years old. What are you doing up, Bill? Cherry Garcia. You want ice cream? A pint of Cherry Garcia. Bill, go back to bed. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You can't have ice cream now. Go back to bed. You understand that's out. Out, out. Specified in the plan. You can't do that. Can you restrict what people eat? Absolutely. But the staff can't. It has to be in the plan, in the plan. He has Prader-Willi syndrome. He has brittle diabetes. He has some issues in the plan. The staff has to give up control. Can't do it. Sorry. Now, hey, by the way, there's a strong social psychological aspect to all this. Do you realize that there are some staff who you employ whose lives are out of control? You have staff who feel that their children are out of control. Their finances are out of control. They're in a relationship with a significant other that is out of control. They have a drug issue that is out of control. What happens when they come to work? They have to gain control. And now you're going to come in and say you can't do that? You better be prepared. You better figure this out. You better have personal power. If you don't, tell me what you're going to do. What are you going to do? Write a memo? Are you resistant to change? Oh, I got to back this up. I like that. That's called a GIF. If you're not familiar with PowerPoint, are you resistive to change? We're all resistive to change. Come on, guys. I had a person once tell me when I was assistant superintendent at Bellefonte Habilitation Center, we were I won't go into detail, we don't have time, but tearing the place apart. And one of the unit directors, every Monday, I'd have a meeting with the unit directors, and her name was Barbara Gully, and she raised her hand, and she said, I said, how's everything going? She raised her hand, and she said, you know what, Tom? There's nothing wrong with change, as long as it doesn't affect me. So I can sit here, and I will talk about the closure of all your facility-based day programs. And those of you who are providing residential supports are thinking, that's a good idea. I think people should spend their day in the community, employed or volunteering. And then when I talk about, hey, all the people who we support now will be able to hire and fire their staff. They'll be able to decide who they live with. You think the thing about the staff is a big deal. That's nothing compared to about the fact that how is it going to be decided who's moving into the home? You're not. And so guess what the people who are over day programs are saying? Boy, that's you guys in supported employment thinking, boy, that's a good idea. They should be able to choose that, right? Yeah, nothing wrong with. So if you're feeling a sense of angst, tie it back to how is it affecting me? And if you're feeling a sense of angst, it's likely because you perceive it's affecting you. If it doesn't affect you, you don't feel the angst, more often than not. You know, there's that old adage, if you could bring back two people from the dead and spend the evening with them. Ever heard of that one? Right? You know, glass of wine. I got two people I'd like to bring back. You folks, could you tell me the two people you'd like to bring back? Two people. One of the people I want to bring back is Einstein. Loved it. And I don't understand his math, his physics, but he was one hell of a philosopher. This guy was incredible. He was great. And had scores of wonderful maxims that he used. And I'd like to share one with you because it really fits at this point. Great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds. So you're going to hear a lot of opposition. Just keep in mind what Einstein said. And that one maxim, there's nothing wrong with change unless it affects me. I've concretized it. You like the word concretize? Isn't that a good word? It's not a word, I made it up. It's my word. Don't take my word. Go make up your own words. I'm a neologist. A neologist is a person who makes up words. They're called neologisms, okay? Concretize is a neologism. So there's nothing wrong with change as long as it doesn't affect me. And if you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always gotten. And this next one will really help you as well. This is really good. People do not resist change. They resist being changed. So if licensure announced that the temperature could not exceed 105 degrees versus 110 degrees, people aren't going to resist it. What do they care? Because we're not asking them to change. We just made a change. You're not asking them to change. What the final rule is about, you're asking them to change. You're asking yourself in some cases, but I don't know where any of you are. It's sort of nice that I haven't coached in your environments, because one of your environments I have, there's one of you here that I have, because I'm not making statements about you. I mean, you can take them any way you want. And then this next one is really good too. If I just put the title up, you notice every slide has the same format, 5,240 slides. At the bottom of every slide are two words, universal enhancement. Notice that? And what does that mean? Well, sometimes people come into my sessions and they're thinking, Tom's going to give us a new method, a new technique, a strategy that we can use on people with developmental disabilities. Watch out, those people are dangerous. These are the same people who have special strategies for Latinos, African Americans, Armenians, Jews, and people from Omaha. Guys, they got these strategies. There is no special strategies. The strategy that you and I use to enhance the quality of our life is the exact same strategies we use to enhance the quality of life of the people we support. Everything that is in the new rule is totally universal. Nothing in there is special. That's why we're having such a hard time with it, because that's not how we've operated. Everything has been special. You got the special, that's a whole other discussion. I won't go there. And then the second part, universal. Every slide has a title on it because they're all indexed in a table of contents. So I'm going to put this one up here with just the title and tell me if you could fill in the blanks. Here it is. If you can't, people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. People will never forget how you made them feel. So, like, when you ask me the question, is it Dina Fey or Dina Fey? Dina Fey. I'm asking the whole time because you're so serious, importantly, about the question. My concern was not so much about the answer or whether the answer helped you. I was far more concerned about how I made you feel and the way I answered the question. I did not feel good about how I gave you the answer. I could have done better in how I communicated that to you and how I dealt with you. That's not your issue, it's my issue. Because if somebody comes into a session and they don't go away enthused, motivated, and excited, it's irrelevant what they learned. Because they won't even take the things that they already know and do something with them. I'm giving you a hint. I'm giving you a hint about what you need to be doing when you go back. It's how you make those staff and those families feel. Especially when you have staff who don't even want to be there. Some of you have staff that are trying to survive. Some of you have staff that are single head of household. Tell me if I'm right. 2 or 3 kids, working 2 full-time jobs, trying to make it from paycheck to paycheck to survive. And then you're going to come in with the final rule talking about quality of life? You're a joke. You're a joke. How are you going to make this work? How are you going to do it? Let's take a look at one more and then we'll go on break, because this next one's really important too. It's R before INT. Please memorize that. Please, you're going to need it. R before INT. And you'll note that everything that I'm sharing with you is applicable to everything. All this is applicable to how you're raising your kids, how you're getting along with your significant other. It's everything. R before INT. Relationships before issues and tasks. The relationship must always come first. Sorry. I didn't know that. By the way, I was trained as a radical behaviorist. I got my doctorate at Indiana University. The chairman of the school of psychology before I got there was B.F. Skinner. You ever heard of Skinner? Give me a break. I didn't get this stuff. Relationships. I thought the word bond was never in my vocabulary. Bond. Now I understand that when you bond with people, they're less likely to behave in a way to disappoint you. In one of my books, I have almost an entire chapter devoted to the word bond because I wanted behaviorists to understand that the concept of bond exists. And if you want your staff to follow what you want them to do, then you need to emotionally connect with these staff. You got to emotionally connect with them. You have a choice. But if we hire managers and supervisors who can't even emotionally connect with their own kids, they can't emotionally connect with their significant other, how can I ask a supervisor to emotionally connect with their staff? Okay, guys. See, you came in here, I told you this is going to be difficult. You know why this is difficult? It's not about the people you support. It's not about your staff. Who's this about? You. Sorry. I don't have any other way to put it together. Why? Because there's only one person's behavior that is under your control. Only one. And I don't know about you. I'm a full-time job for myself. It takes everything I got to manage my behavior, and half the time I'm not successful. Just ask my wife. She'll be happy to tell you.